Imagine a director, someone you know really well for one specific thing. Maybe quirky comedies, always in the same city, always that kind of familiar character.
Yeah, you know exactly what you're getting.
Exactly. And then, bam, they drop a film that's completely different.
Hmm.
Dark, tense, brutal even. New city, none of the old trademarks. It's quite a jolt, right?
That definitely makes you sit up and pay attention.
Well, that's pretty much the story we're diving into today. We're unpacking Woody Allen's film Match Point.
Ah, Match Point, yes. A real curveball in his filmography.
It really was. Based on the sources, this wasn't just, a minor adjustment. It feels like a radical shift.
Totally. We're talking leaving behind that signature neurotic comedy, the Manhattan backdrop he's famous for, even that kind of Woody Allen-esque character we often saw.
Right. And instead, Matchpoint dives headfirst into this psychological thriller territory. It's all about tension, moral ambiguity, some pretty uncomfortable stuff, actually.
And the sources really highlight those core themes that make it stand out. Luck, crime, guilt, and maybe the most chilling one, impunity.
Impunity, that's a strong word. The idea that someone can commit a crime and just not face consequences.
Precisely, that justice or maybe even karma just doesn't factor in. It's quite stark.
And your sources really seem to dig into why this shift happened, the actual plot, these themes, and, the splash it made.
Yeah, they give great context. It wasn't just Allen trying a different genre hat. It feels deeper, like a real creative reinvention.
Okay, so that sets up our mission for this deep dive then. What exactly makes Match Point such a major departure for Woody Allen? And maybe more importantly, what does it reveal about him exploring these darker, kind of bleak ideas?
Let's get into it. I mean, for decades, you knew an Allen film instantly, right?
Oh, absolutely. Fast dialogue, witty urban neuroses, existential jokes, usually steeped in that New York intellectual scene, often with him or a version of him right there on screen.
You knew the formula, more or less. His name was practically synonymous with that specific type of film.
Yeah, but Match Point just smashes that role. There's almost no humor, or at least not the kind we expect.
Right. And the setting boom, London, which, as the readings mentioned, was part of his move to filming in Europe, driven by a mix of artistic reasons and, well, practical ones too.
And the whole feel of the film shifts too, doesn't it? I saw one analysis mentioning how much colder, more detached it seems, visually, sonically.
That detachment is absolutely key. Some sources pointed specifically to the score, Philip Glass, I think. Very tense, minimalist, a massive break from his usual jazz soundtrack.
Oh, interesting. And the look, too.
Yeah, colder cinematography, more desaturated colors. Even the voiceover isn't for jokes. It's the protagonist's confession, almost philosophical, adding to that dark, cerebral mood.
Okay, so let's talk plot briefly, because that's where these themes really play out. It follows Chris Wilton.
Right, the former tennis pro. He's ambitious, uses his charm to climb into London's upper crust, marries into wealth.
But he's also having this intense, risky affair on the side.
Exactly. And that's the collision course. His ambition, his new life, versus the secret that could destroy it all. He reaches a point where he has to make a choice.
A choice that leads to something pretty shocking based on the sources, a crime committed specifically to protect his position.
Yes, and the film apparently depicts the planning, the execution, with this kind of unflinching, almost clinical detail. It doesn't shy away.
What seems particularly unsettling, reading through the analyses, is this focus on impunity you mentioned earlier. Allen's dealt with guilt before, like in Crimes and Misdemeanors.
The classic.
But here, the suggestion is, he explores a scenario where the crime isn't really followed by crushing guilt or legal punishment. Chris kind of evolves into this, well, terrifyingly amoral figure. Cool, calculating.
Almost chillingly composed, yeah. And that famous tennis ball metaphor really drives it home, doesn't it?
Explain that again.
The idea of a moment, like a tennis ball hitting the top of the net. It could fall one way or the other. Pure chance dictates the outcome, not skill, not morality, not justice, just luck.
Wow, so that really forces the big question the film poses. How much of life is governed by justice or fairness, and how much is just random luck?
Exactly. And the sources stress that the lack of a neat moral or legal resolution for Chris isn't some oversight. It's a very deliberate, provocative choice by Allen. And it definitely stirred up debate when it came out.
I bet. How was it received generally?
Mixed, but significant. Some praise the boldness, the Hitchcockian suspense, the smart script. Apparently it did particularly well in Europe. Others found it, too bleak, too cynical. Like maybe letting the protagonist get away with it felt wrong.
An endorsement of amorality, maybe?
Some critics certainly read it that way. But looking back now, Match Point really seemed to have secured its place.
How so?
Well, several sources mark it as a key film in Allen's later European period. It sparked conversations about ambiguous characters, about fate versus free will in movies. It had an impact.
Okay, so pulling it all together from this deep dive, Match Point wasn't just Woody Allen dabbling in a new genre. It feels more like a genuine and pretty successful reinvention.
I think that's fair. He kept some core thematic interests, luck, morality, guilt, but he completely jettisoned his usual style. He proved he could handle much darker, more complex stuff and still have a distinct voice.
Yeah, the sources really highlight how that stark portrayal of a world where luck might just beat justice, where the lack of consequence is the point. It makes it a challenging film, but a really significant one.
It definitely doesn't offer easy answers. It presents uncomfortable ideas about people and, the randomness of life, all set against that polished backdrop of British high society, which makes the contrast even sharper.
So it leaves us, and you listening, with a final thought to chew on, building right off that unsettling core idea of the film. If justice doesn't always win out, how much of what happens in your own life really is down to the choices you make, and how much is just sheer dumb luck?